22 deleted bits of content, 7 levels. From a live dissection to a murder simulator where players can crush a character's skull with a toilet seat. This Iceberg includes some of the most disturbing discoveries in video games. As we go deeper, you'll understand why some things are better left buried. Level 1. Hallucinations in Resident Evil 4. Few know that Resident Evil 4 went through a major transformation during its development. Known as Resident Evil 3.5, this original version was much more spooky, but the creators weren't happy about that and they immediately replaced it with a version that was much more action-packed. So, what did this version look like? In the game, Leon gets trapped in a cursed castle and is hunted down by all sorts of ghosts. But is any of this real? It's hinted that Leon was infected by the progenitor virus, and that everything he experiences is actually his hallucination. Real or not, the clips from this scrapped version reveal some pretty spooky characters. For example, statues would jump at Leon out of nowhere. You'd see a bunch of creepy dolls moving on their own and coming to life. The most famous of all was the infamous Hookman. In a corridor hangs the painting of a fisherman carrying a hook, except when you attempt to pass, it triggers a hallucination and the Hookman climbs out of the painting. This Hookman became a notorious figure for its vicious attacks. As it moved towards you, it would glitch in and out and nothing would stop it. As it aggressively launched at Leon, its hook would pass through his body like a shadow. So while the entity may not be able to cut you, your bullets are also useless against him. There were a number of reasons why this version was scrapped. The official reason was that it strayed so far from the survival horror that it felt more like a sequel to Silent Hill. Others felt that instead of being an exciting experience, the game became frustrating. But it's likely that the game's potential was lost to technical constraints. Whatever the reason, it's a little sad to imagine what this version could have been. Because let's admit it, a phantom having a go at you is pretty darn chilling. Level 2. Osiris throwing his son in Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is already pretty bleak with its gothic themes and tragic lore, but there is one scene that was considered abhorrent: Osiris mishandling his son. Well, that may be an understatement. The scene was so grim that it was removed before the game was even released. You see, Osiris used to be dangerously obsessed with dragons, to the point that he ended up transforming himself into a pale dragon-like creature. When you find him in his garden, he has completely lost it. There he is, just sitting and mumbling away. In the game, you see him cradling something invisible, but in the deleted version, there was a baby model in his arms, and spoiler alert, he does not make it. As soon as Osiris sees you, he becomes hostile. Now the only thing standing between you and the untended graves is a furious beast. The entire time you can see Osiris holding something in his arm. Things escalate during the second phase of the battle when, in a fit of rage, Osiris throws the baby on the ground. Now, the scene is not graphic in itself, as we practically don't even see a body on the ground, but the act itself is so violent that it leaves you speechless. Even after committing the most gruesome act, Osiris just continues with the fight. It's insane. So insane that the game developers ended up changing this part completely. They knew that fans would not respond positively to it. There was also the possibility that the game could be banned in some countries because of infant cruelty. After the update, the baby model was removed and you can only hear its cries during the combat. Osiris now cradles empty air. Whether the baby still exists, even in his mind, is for you to decide. It's hard not to think about the deranged alternate twist while playing the game. Level 3. The violent executions in Manhunt 2. Brutal executions and violence are considered the hallmark of the Manhunt series. So in 2007, when Manhunt 2 came out, it made headlines because of heavy censorship towards its more violent moments, of which there were many. In the original version of the game, Daniel Lamb is more ruthless than ever. He uses machetes, ice picks, and whatnot to execute his enemies in the most brutal ways known to mankind. After significant backlash from the ESRB, Rockstar Games modified Manhunt 2 and blurred out some of its more violent executions. Weapons like the razor, mace, and sledgehammers were replaced, head explosions and decapitations removed entirely. Rather than being bright red, the blood would appear bluish. Some of the more violent lines of dialogue were altered, so instead of talking about how Lamb is going to attack people, he would simply call it fighting back. During executions, a red filter would cover the screen, and instead of seeing a guy getting hit with a bat, you'd only get a flash of red. As if the game's general love of violence isn't messed up enough, it also originally featured a scoring system that rewarded players for their executions. The more gruesome and creative the deed, the higher your score would be, as if inflicting pain is something to derive pleasure or achievement from. Fortunately, this system was also removed in the censored version to reduce the game's violent impact. The question is, did the censorship help? Despite its many filters, the game still got banned in multiple countries like the UK, Germany, and Ireland. According to Irish film censors, it was gross, unrelenting, and gratuitous violence. However, the new sanitized version got a mixed response from fans. While some appreciated how Rockstar dealt with sensitive parts, others were not satisfied, as they would rather see it all play out on the screen instead of imagining it. Manhunt 2 doesn't have a meaningful story or some complex narrative. All it does is show violence, and that seems to be the only point. So much so that it almost feels senseless and unnecessary. As you see a man getting bloodied, it does make you wonder, do we really need to see all that? Monokuma's original design in Danganronpa. When we talk of teddy bears, a cute, cuddly creature comes to mind. Adults and kids both find bears comforting and even see it as a symbol of love. In Danganronpa, the psychopathic Monokuma shatters that innocent image with his monochrome design and malevolent grin. But that's not the worst part about him. According to the game's art book, Monokuma was supposed to be a naked human with half its body without any flesh and skin. In the game, Monokuma is the headmaster of Hope's Peak Academy. His sole purpose is to make students miserable. His half-white, half-black body resembles a yin-yang symbol representing the balance between opposing forces. The white side is shown to be friendly, but the black side is evil. It's always scheming and finding ways to make things worse for the kids. Perhaps when the artist was initially designing Monokuma's character, they wanted to embody that idea in a more visceral way. We can clearly see his internal organs, his intestines, heart, brain, and blood vessels. Who even came up with that? Apparently, the original design was also supposed to be called Phantom, which makes sense since Monokuma in Japanese translates to mono bear. While his current appearance might not be traditionally scary, Monokuma's manipulative nature and sadistic humor makes him a truly sinister villain. He essentially forces students to eliminate their classmates if they want to escape. Given the context of his original design, the entire character of Monokuma becomes even more sickening. We're lucky they settled with a black and white bear. A guy with his organs spilling out inciting teens to be violent would have been beyond horrifying. Which version do you prefer, the schizophrenic teddy bear or the unsettling sight of exposed innards? Either way, you better hope you don't really encounter this dude. Then again, as long as you don't yearn for hope, you'll never fall victim to despair. Jimmy falling in acid in Bully. In 2006, Bully became one of the first major high-profile games to put bullying at the forefront of its narrative and gameplay. But sometime after the game's release, data miners made a disturbing discovery. The game's protagonist, Jimmy, was initially meant to die by falling into a vat of acid. Throughout the game, we see Jimmy going head-to-head with Edgar, the ringleader of the bullies. But in the mission Showdown at the Plant, Jimmy finally confronts Edgar in what can be seen as the final boss fight of the game. In the finished game, this happens at the school's bell tower, but the initial idea was to have the two characters fight in a chemical plant where Jimmy falls into a container filled with acid, leading to a painful death. In the uncovered audio files, Edgar is heard taunting Jimmy about falling into acid while making vile comments such as taking an acid bath and burns, doesn't it?
Poor little Jimmy taking an acid bath. That that burns, doesn't it?
It's not clear whether Jimmy's death was meant as a plot point or just one of the multiple endings, but the revelation created shockwaves among fans. Bully had already faced some controversy even before its release. There were concerns about the game's content and whether it would encourage bad behavior in children. Now add to it the plot twist of a literal child suffering immensely. It was not received well. It was not just a simple shooting or explosion, it was a prolonged and painful demise of a major character. This level of violence, even if unused, naturally generated discussion in the gaming community. It's safe to say that whoever decided to scrap the idea made the right call. A 15-year-old boy dying in such a horrible way would have blown up and caused a massive scandal for Rockstar. Well, an even bigger one. The Slaughterhouse in The Walking Dead series. In the third installment of Telltale's The Walking Dead series, there is a disturbing detail where walkers are kept in a slaughterhouse. The story is basically about people's struggle to survive zombies, but there are some factions that exploit this situation. One of those groups is the New Frontier, who caged walkers in a compound. Their goal? To control and intimidate people. According to one theory, the group would kidnap people and turn them into walkers just to build a zombie army they could control. The name itself is pretty telling when it comes to the horrors that happen within these walls. Everybody knows that slaughterhouses are used to process animals. By default, New Frontier was dehumanizing its victims and treating them like livestock to be disposed of. Audio files were also recovered from the game's data where walkers can be heard banging on cages and moaning. The facility never made it to the game, but you can see a small section of it behind the junkyard. Disturbing details like cages, metal hooks, and metal saw bands could be seen in the background. It was a chilling reminder of the new world. According to the creative director, the slaughterhouse was not included because it didn't feel like an authentic Walking Dead story. But people have speculated that the concept may actually be too dark, even for a game like Walking Dead. Illustrations were created to visualize the place that could have been. Despite the removal, hardcore fans yearned for this darker version that would have been more brutal and unsettling. They saw the exclusion of the slaughterhouse as a missed opportunity to explore the depths of human depravity within the game's world. Level 4. The Maypole in Fallout 4. In a world ravaged by nuclear war, you'll meet all sorts of monsters. From green-skinned humanoids to giant scorpions, everything in Fallout 4 serves as a visual reminder of the horrors unleashed by nuclear radiation. But there is one particular creature that still lives rent-free in our minds, and ironically, it's not even a part of the game. The Maypole is one of the scariest-looking ghouls to have been visually conceived. A 300-foot behemoth lumbering through the ruined streets of Boston? That would have been a petrifying sight. In an AMA, artist Jonah Loeb revealed that his inspiration came from Shadow of the Colossus and The Walking Man by Augusto Rodin. Apparently, much like the fans, Loeb also never got over his passion project. In his own words, he wanted the creature to look like he was a melting elemental of agony. It's safe to say that he successfully delivered. Maypole's flesh resembles melting candle wax, revealing parts of his charred skeleton. A sickly glow radiated from his body, highlighting his empty sockets where his eyes had been. It's not just terror that Maypole inspired, you could see immense suffering on his ruined face, a proof of his tragic existence. In a dark twist, the creature was named after the Maypole, which is a symbol of springtime celebration where people dance around it with ribbons. The plan was to also surround Maypole with feral ghouls, which would have made him an extremely challenging boss in the game. Maypole's appearance was supposed to be a one-time thing, but the creators ended up dropping the idea because of the potential technical issues. Imagine that, technical issues in a Bethesda game. After Loeb spoke out, people started wondering how much more terrifying this character could have been. Unfortunately, the ghouls we did get look like burn victims rather than flesh-eating monsters. Still, it's terrifying to imagine a rotting giant haunting the shadows, creating a radiation storm of its own. Gordon Freeman's death in Half-Life Decay. When Half-Life came out in 1998, Gordon Freeman immediately became a fan favorite. So when it was leaked that Gordon was supposed to die in Half-Life Decay, it upset many die-hard fans. Half-Life Decay was not just any sequel, it was an expansion to the first game where players could experience the original events from a different angle. In this story, you relive the Black Mesa incident through the eyes of Dr. Colette Green and Dr. Gina Cross. As a major character, Gordon was also the perfect hero. He started as an ordinary scientist who was thrown into extraordinary circumstances. Despite the chaos, he managed to make the best out of his situation and fought for what was right. Fortunately, the scene was cut out, but there are still clips of the execution online. After Gordon is captured by two soldiers, we see them holding him on a ledge with a gun over his head, but their comments are cruel. They seem to be enjoying having him in such a state. One of the soldiers comments on how he has wanted to do this for a long time. After a brief section of laughing around and discussing ways to end his life, one soldier shoots Gordon and we see him falling down on the ground.
Primary target acquired, we got him. We got Freeman! About damn time. I hope they kill him quick. Let's just toss him in and turn this thing on. I don't want any more blood in my clothes. You gotta make sure he's dead first. Now hold him over the door and shoot him that way, then you can just drop him in. Yeah, okay. Rotten hell, Freeman. See you around, Freeman. Bye-bye. Been wanting to do this a long time.
Even though Gordon was not an active agent in the game, you could still see his actions from other scientists' perspectives. It made you appreciate his character even more, so his death made no sense at all. Gordon isn't shown falling to his death in the game, but the thought of it is disturbing. Such a plot twist could have been emotionally devastating. It would have shattered the player's faith in their own judgment. Was Gordon not the chosen one? The free man? Perhaps the creators foresaw this potential backlash and dodged a bullet by making the right decision at the right time. And now it's time for you to make the right decision at the right time by hitting that subscribe button for more gaming mysteries. Bloodborne's Hidden Monsters. Released in 2015, Bloodborne is famous for its challenging gameplay and gothic horror setting. But most of all, it's unforgettable because of nightmarish monsters. Things became even more interesting when data miners uncovered bizarre characters that no one had seen before in the game. Bloodborne draws heavily from the works of H.P. Lovecraft and Bram Stoker, which explains the game's disturbing nature. In the ancient city of Yharnam, your enemies are hostile beasts, a direct result of an endemic plague. As a monster hunter, you have to cleanse the city, so be prepared to face all sorts of abominations. But there's more. Locked deep within the game, there are things that should have been kept, well, locked. One of the discoveries was the Great One Beast. It looked like a hybrid creature with a wolf-like skeletal structure, but with fleshy, tentacled growths coming out of its body. With its devilish appearance, it's not hard to feel intimidated just by looking at it. Another monster that became popular because of its hideousness was the Snake Ball. You guessed it right, the beast was basically a huge pile of snakes coiled together into a sphere. To make it even more nauseating, humanoid faces were embedded within the snake mass. Overall, the visuals were too chaotic to handle, and it's hard to look straight at the screen with this serpentine horror writhing about. These characters had fully developed levels, which surprised everyone. It meant that someone went through all that extra trouble just for these monsters to become ghosts in the machine. We'll never know if these were the original ideas that were modified later or if they were dropped for being far too disturbing. But one thing is for sure, fans were spared a lasting nightmare because the Snake Ball is the stuff of waking terrors. The Upside-Down Sinners in World of Warcraft. Few things are darker than a crypt with human bodies hanging upside down. That is what players found when they investigated the Forbidden Vault underneath Karazhan in World of Warcraft. Near the town of Deadwind Pass in Medivh's Tower, a haunted ancient structure that used to be the home of Guardian Medivh. While exploring this area, fans found a blocked entrance and knew they had to find a way to get in. What they did not expect was that they would unlock one of the most disturbing mysteries in the gaming world, one that still remains unsolved. Because the area is not meant to be accessed, you have to use glitches and unconventional means to bypass it. Inside, you'll see a stairwell leading to a dark dungeon, and it clearly seems off-limits. The abandoned crypt is vast and immediately gives off ominous vibes. As you move from one chamber to another, you'll notice something. Human bones are scattered across the floor, but that's not all. There is a chamber filled with water, and as you dive into it, you'll witness a terrible sight. Chained at their ankles, human bodies hang upside down in this pool. These corpses are missing eyes and limbs, almost as if they've been tormented. The sight is so horrifying it instantly reminds you of the river Styx. If you keep going, you'll even come across a huge mound of human bones. Blizzard never gave an official statement on why this area existed, but it's pretty obvious that the crypts were abandoned mid-production and then sealed off, as if they were trying to contain something inside these walls. The popular explanation is that the crypts would have risked pushing the game to a mature rating, affecting its sales. But one thing the developers did not foresee was their fans exposing the skeletons in their closet, literally. Even today, the bodies still float beneath the tower as a haunting reminder of the unanswered questions. It's chilling to even think of the direction the game almost took with these grim visuals. Were these poor souls being punished for their sins? Boomer vomiting blood in Left 4 Dead. Being a survivor in Left 4 Dead is a relentless struggle against a group of infected. You're constantly getting punched, blown, and dragged by grotesque creatures who are not dead but are also not truly alive. At one point, the developers even considered an infected to vomit out blood, but the idea was dropped later. The origin of the infection in Left 4 Dead is never truly revealed, but it's clear that a highly contagious and mutating virus turns people into mindless, violent killers. The infection also transmits from one to another through direct contact, and so escaping the contagion becomes almost impossible when an infected is literally vomiting on you. The Boomer is a bloated special infected who you shouldn't mess with. Grotesquely obese, this guy's body is covered in boils and lesions. Due to a mutation, it produces bile to cripple the survivors. Its immense size makes it slow and clumsy, but also a hazard. After a point, its massive body can explode, drenching you with its lethal fluids. Initially, the Boomer would also vomit blood on you, which is as gross as it sounds. The idea was dropped because it was considered excessively graphic and realistic. Valve wanted to maintain a certain level of horror, but they also wanted the game to be accessible to a wider audience. A blood-vomiting character would have resulted in restrictions from the ratings board. In the end, it came down to the design choice, and the creators decided to play it safe. Some fans were disappointed with the decision, as the blood vomit would have been more visceral and impactful. However, the Boomer is already repulsive as it is, and adding blood would have pushed it into truly horrifying territory. GTA's criminal mastermind. GTA is widely known for its quirky and badass characters, and doing illegal activities is basically GTA's brand. But it seemed that Darkel went a bit too far. When rumors spread of a character being removed from the third installment, it raised eyebrows. Conceived as an evil street urchin, Darkel wanted to see Liberty City burn. Though his motivations were unclear, his twisted ideas suggested his psychopathic nature. He didn't care who got hurt as long as the job got done, a direction that felt extremely even within GTA's violent world. You'll find Darkel roaming the alleys where he would ask you to kill a certain number of pedestrians in a specific time. He was also set to be invincible, so it didn't matter if you ran him over with the car, the mission would still be triggered. After Darkel's character was scrapped, some of his missions were given to other bosses. The I Scream, You Scream is the only confirmed mission that survived the changes and is assigned by another guy called El Burro. This is also where we get a peek into Darkel's criminal mind. In the mission, you have to steal an ice cream van and rig it with a bomb. Ultimately, the target is a group of Forelli gangsters, but something about turning a symbol of joy into a weapon feels deranged. It's about luring people in, and that means that pedestrians can get caught in the middle. Many fans felt that these missions looked more like attacks than anything else. Rockstar probably foresaw that Darkel could taint their legacy and thought it best to remove him from the picture. It's true that GTA is just a game, but we shouldn't forget that violence has real-world consequences, and so it must be dealt with responsibly. Level 5. The Terrifying Monsters of Silent Hill. Silent Hill is considered one of the creepiest games to grace our gaming consoles. Its psychological horror and disturbing images get under your skin and stay with you long after you've finished playing. 18 years after the game came out, fans uncovered 7 encrypted files with bizarre enemies they had not seen before. For the fans, it was like experiencing the game all over again. Only this time, the horror was amplified by these grotesque new versions. Some of these creatures were so profoundly unsettling, all you'd want to do is look away. It's clear that most were abandoned midway because their models seemed incomplete, but somehow this only made them more creepy? Imagine a frog, but without a head. That's the best way to describe one of the prototypes, which was a disturbing mass of twitching flaps. It wasn't just the design, but the way it moved. Staring at it is bound to evoke something unpleasant deep inside you. Then there's the monster literally called Meat, as it's a giant meat carcass. It's so repulsive that it will instantly activate your gag reflex, and you'll be glad it didn't get past the beta stage. One of the more popular ones is the wheelchair monster, which is a horribly abstracted human being. Other than its face and arms, you can't really tell apart what's what, as it's sewn to a wheelchair, a horribly mutilated being that strikes both fear and pity in your heart. Silent Hill's enemies are not just scary monsters out to get you. They are the manifestations of Heather's fears and traumas. They represent her internal struggles, a fact that makes all of it even more dreadful. The darker the trauma, the more messed up looking creature. It's like a terrifying journey into the most terrible corners of the human mind. Maybe these animalistic designs did not align with Heather's character or her past, or maybe the game artist was not able to complete these models. What we do know is that having these abominations in the game would have been a nightmare. Amanda's death in Tomb Raider Underworld. As an action-adventure game, Tomb Raider does a great job of building its characters and their relationships. One of these was the friendship between Lara and Amanda. In an alternate ending, that friendship ends in the worst way possible, with Lara taking Amanda's life. Anyone who has ever played the game deeply cherished the bond between these two, so the possibility of this ending left fans shocked and disturbed. Having known each other since their university days, Amanda and Lara bonded over their shared passion. It was their mutual ambition that led them to an expedition in Peru. Fate struck and Amanda presumably died in an accident. Later, it is revealed that she was indeed alive, but something had changed. Amanda harbored resentment against Lara for leaving her to die. This betrayal cut deep, making their conflict intensely personal. When the tension escalates, we see a final confrontation between the two in a cutscene. In one final attempt, Amanda attacks Lara from behind. Lara swiftly shoots her in the leg, and Amanda falls to the ground. As Amanda lies there in pain, the anguish on Lara's face is visible. We see her making the impossible decision as she leaves her once best friend to die. As Lara moves forward, Amanda is seen limping behind, so we know it's the end of her character arc and her life. What possessed the creators to write such a heartbreaking ending is still a mystery. The final version of the game has a more ambiguous conclusion where Amanda's fate is left open to interpretation. Had Amanda died, it would have been a haunting reminder of how even the closest relationships can be torn apart by conflict and resentment. There are no generic villains or ugly monsters in this deleted scene. Only a girl dying at the hands of her friend. Lucas seeing his dead mother in Mother 3. Beneath its colorful exterior, Mother 3 explores grief and resilience through Lucas's journey, but a hidden scene reveals a much darker side to his trauma. In Chapter 1, Lucas's mother tragically dies, which partially serves as the catalyst for his character arc. But in an uncovered scene, her kind and caring image gets compromised when she appears in Lucas's dream as a frightening ghost. In order to protect Lucas and his twin brother, Hinawa sacrificed herself to save them from Drago, a large prehistoric animal. Hidden deep in the game's data, a brief sequence was found where Lucas is seen in a dark, distorted vision of his house and is greeted by his dead mother. A Appearing as a ghost, Hinawa's image is far from comforting and creates a feeling of fear and unease. To make it even more spooky, we also got a strange audio file. The sound can only be described as a giant mess of echoing sounds which gets more and more distorted each time it loops. Apart from the visuals, the symbolism is also pretty devastating. The game's title was inspired by Shigesato Itoi's own rocky relationship with his mom. As a huge Beatles fan, he was deeply moved by John Lennon's mother and decided to explore similar themes and emotions in his game. Lucas's journey is a direct consequence of Hinawa's death, forever marked by his traumas and the weight of survivor's guilt. Even after dying, her memory and love motivates him throughout his journey. So Hinawa's ghost waving her arms with an angry expression is a haunting scene to imagine. It contrasted with her loving and caring role, and no one wants to see their mother in such a scary way. The execution of Undolamar in Skyrim. The clash between the Stormcloaks and the Empire pretty much defines Skyrim, but a deleted scene featuring Galmar executing Undolamar revealed a disturbing side of Galmar. Galmar Stonefist is a high-ranking officer who fights for Skyrim's independence, while Undolamar represents the Thalmor, a foreign power that wants to control Skyrim. Both enemies stand on opposite sides of a political and ideological conflict, but only one comes out as the victor. Originally, the Stormcloaks would have taken over Markarth and appointed their own Jarl. In a deleted scene, Galmar confronts Undolamar after the takeover and tells him to get on his knees. But Undolamar, being Undolamar, responds arrogantly. Losing his patience, Galmar then strikes his head with an axe. Despite Undolamar falling, Galmar hits him a few more times before asking guards to get that thing out of here and burn it.
I said, on your knees, elf!
Enjoy this while you can. Soon you will all be slaves.
Someone get that thing out of here and burn it.
The entire sequence is kind of brutal. We can see Undolamar being surrounded by Stormcloaks, so the execution seemed excessive. Not only was Undolamar not really a threat in that moment, but a defeated enemy does not deserve to be bludgeoned to death. In the game, none of this happens, and we simply see a coffin in Markarth's Hall of the Dead with Undolamar's belongings. Instead of showing the violence, the game implies that the Stormcloak soldiers killed him when they took over the city. And honestly, that was the right decision. Galmar bashing Undolamar's head is not only graphic, but it also reflects badly on Galmar himself. It reveals a savage impulse in him, and the distinction between righteous rebellion and senseless brutality should never be blurred. Level 6. Nudity in South Park: The Fractured But Whole. The South Park franchise has a history of attracting controversy through its satire of religion and crude humor. It doesn't surprise anyone that certain scenes and characters were slashed off during the production stage. In fact, it's genuinely surprising that these parts were considered inappropriate even by South Park standards. One of those cutscenes involved two characters in the worst possible situation. The two camp counselors were seen stuck in what seemed to be a saw-like trap that would drop blades on them if they moved. To make matters even more disturbing, the poor creatures didn't have their clothes on. Another concept art also showed the counselors ambushed in a room. This time, they were taped to rubber ducks, again, naked. Arrows were aimed at the male counselor while the woman dangled precariously above a pool of bubbling acid. The writings on the walls suggested that you'd have had to choose who to save, but it was probably just a mind game to mess with the players. A hidden death trap was at the exit to make sure that nobody escaped alive. Voice lines were also revealed with the two characters cursing in desperation. In order to get to the bottom of it, Household Warrior managed to access a mysterious cabin in the game. What he found left everyone with more questions than answers. In a brutal sight, the counselors were lying dead on the floor, presumably killed by one of the traps. Drenched in a pool of blood, the bodies were pierced by knives and blades, but there was also a dead guy in a hazmat suit behind them. But hey, at least he was fully dressed. Thankfully, the scene was cut off because it was seen as too grim and inappropriate for teens. No objections there. Kid zombies in Resident Evil 2. In an industry often plagued by tone-deaf choices, it's great to see developers demonstrating sensitivity. That's what Shinji Mikami did by removing child zombies from Resident Evil. The zombie child was an enemy proposed for the very first Resident Evil, but it was removed before the game's release in 1995. According to the lore, these enemies would have been test subjects of Umbrella Corporation, a company that secretly developed biological weapons. Zombies, by their nature, are already disturbing. Adding children to that equation amplifies the horror because it corrupts innocence. Children are vulnerable and need our protection. Showing them as violent monsters subverts this expectation and presents you with a moral dilemma. Are you willing to harm a child even if it's technically not alive? The concept of zombie children is not new, as we've already seen them in the media. The pale, decaying skin and bloody wounds on their delicate body tells only one story. Whatever innocence these children once possessed, it has been consumed by the infection. Now all you have in front of you is a monstrous threat that needs to be eliminated. When asked about the removal of zombie children, Shinji Mikami explained that it felt morally wrong to be blowing kids' heads off even if they are zombies. Mikami's statement came as a surprise, as creators do not always explicitly address ethical considerations in their work. There are many reasons why the idea of undead kids feels wrong. Mainly it's the contrast between their childish appearance and the horrific zombified state. Violence against such child zombies would have been deeply troubling because it violates our inherent instinct to shield those who are powerless. Skulls and decapitated heads in Spider-Man 2. Released in 2023, Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 promised a thrilling adventure for players of all ages. But the revelation of a hidden room with human heads sent shockwaves through the gaming community. One of the main villains is Kraven, who has his own lair in the game. While exploring the hideout, players come across a trophy room which harbored its own dark secrets. The room could only be discovered by glitching, so it was either unfinished content or an oversight that was meant to be inaccessible in the game. As soon as you entered, the first thing you'd notice was the spikes lined across the walls, but something else would catch your eye. Surrounded by skulls, a throne sat in front of a wall decorated with ornaments, except those weren't actually ornaments. Up close, you could see there were heads cut off and stuck to the wall. A larger head hung in the middle with 3 smaller ones beside it. Rhino's head was easy to recognize because of his helmet. Fans thought the other heads were Vulture, Electro, and Shocker. It looked like Kraven had them and kept their heads as trophies. Such disturbing imagery pushed Kraven's character into a dark territory, where he enjoyed hurting these people. Once he was done, he went a step further and used his victims as props, as if he was proud of what he did. Kraven is a villain motivated by the thrill of the hunt, so he's expected to be evil, but this level of depravity feels extreme, particularly in a Spider-Man game known for its lighthearted tone and humor. Even the violence we do see in the game is more in line with web-slinging action and less with gruesome displays of death. The identity of the skulls still remains hidden. For all we know, they could have been civilians. Soon after the reveal, a patch was issued and the room was sealed off, burying the mystery of the hanging heads forever. Vivisection in Conker's Bad Fur Day. Conker's Bad Fur Day is known for its mature themes and dark humor, both of which were pretty unusual for Nintendo at the time. The most controversial part of the game was the teddies, who were basically these freaky and violent teddy bears. One of the cutscenes also involved these sadistic bears experimenting on a Squirrel High Command soldier. In the game, you play Conker, a red squirrel who's trying to get home to his girlfriend after a night of heavy drinking. But before he gets home, he has to get past certain obstacles, and one of these challenges was supposed to be fighting off teddies. In the now deleted scene, Conker comes across 2 surgeon teddies in a dimly lit theater. Apart from the fact that they look extremely disturbing with their blood-stained scrubs and masks, it's what they're doing that makes your skin crawl. As Conker enters the room, he slowly realizes that one of his squirrel friends is being cut open by the teddies. As reality dawns on him, Conker clutches his face and exclaims in horror because the squirrel is still alive. We see the squirrel moving as it pleads with teddies to let him go. There's also a momentary shot where you gain the squirrel's perspective with the teddies hunched over you. As blood splashes out of the squirrel's body, the surgeons diligently continue with their vivisection, ignoring the squirrel's pleas. If Conker gets too close to them, they attack him by throwing knives and needles. The scene seems to have been cut late in development, as both animations and voice acting survived in the final build, but it's pretty obvious why it was removed. The sequence did not match the tone of the game at all, and most importantly, there was absolutely no justification for including something bordering on especially in a game about a drunken squirrel. Level 7. Attack image in Mario Kart Arcade GP. In 2005, Namco released Mario Kart Arcade GP in collaboration with Nintendo. At the time, the game created a significant buzz as everyone was excited to try its unique features. You could play as characters from Namco's universe, such as Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man. But the most exciting part was the camera feature, where a camera took your picture and displayed it on your kart during the race. The series was praised for bringing the beloved Mario Kart experience to arcades, but its success was overshadowed by the discovery of 3 images buried within its files. The first image was of a color palette, which was probably just there to test the camera's positioning. The second image was of Japanese mascots. Again, a real-life image was likely there to make sure that the camera features were working properly. It was the third image that no one expected to find in a Mario Kart game. Named as CamTest02, the image was of 4 people who seemed to be running from something. In the picture, a soldier hid behind a building, while on the other side we could see a guy carrying a distressed child on his back. At first, the image was quite confusing because no one could tell if it was some kind of a prank. But once its origin was revealed, people were left mortified. The image was from the Beslan school hostage crisis. In 2004, a Russian school in Beslan was seized by armed militia. The tragedy ended with the death of 334 people, and it's considered the deadliest school shooting in history. It goes without saying that a disaster like this is not something to joke about. The school attack happened during the development of the game, so the artist must have pulled the image from a news clipping. It's also not uncommon for gamers to use random images as placeholders. What is odd is that someone would put such an insensitive image in a kid's game. There's no link or reason whatsoever that justified its existence. Some people brushed off the mishap as an honest mistake, since players clearly were not meant to find this, but others were more skeptical. The person responsible could have literally chosen anything else from the web. Choosing this image felt like a morbid joke, and frankly, it was disgusting. Michael Jackson as a zombie in Plants vs. Zombies. If you were playing Plants vs. Zombies back in the day, you definitely remember that dancing zombie. Plants vs. Zombies was one of the first really popular games on phones that showed that mobile gaming could be a big deal. With its quirky art style and addictive music, it quickly became a fan favorite. But even a harmless game like that wasn't immune to controversy. It's a battle for survival in your own garden as a relentless wave of zombies threatens to devour your brains. As the difficulty ramps up, the zombies also become more aggressive. That's where the Michael Jackson zombie comes in. During one of the levels, the dancing zombie would casually moonwalk his way into your backyard with his eyes popping out. Bearing an eerie resemblance to Michael Jackson, the zombie even wore his iconic red jacket from the popular Thriller music video. As soon as he showed up, you'd hear a modified version of the song. The zombie also had backup dancers, and it felt like a full-blown stage performance invading your lawn. So you can imagine why people thought that the walker mirrored the late singer's mannerisms in a zombified form. The game was released in May 2009, and only 2 months later, Michael Jackson passed away. So the timing could not have been worse. Even though the singer died in June, rumors about his deteriorating health had been circulating long before, which is why the image of Michael Jackson as a reanimated corpse was considered insensitive, as people thought that the game was capitalizing on a tragedy. Another reason behind the backlash was that people saw a complex cultural icon like Michael Jackson reduced to a dancing zombie. Not only did they find it disrespectful, but also trivializing his legacy. While PopCap wasn't directly profiting from Michael Jackson, they were arguably benefiting from his cultural influence without any direct acknowledgement or compensation. Once the Michael Jackson estate found out about this character, they requested that the zombie be removed. PopGap Games did not want to risk any trouble, so they replaced it with a generic disco zombie. Tribute or not, you have to admit, the Dancing Zombie's debut so close to Michael Jackson's death is definitely an odd coincidence. The Scary Clowns in Manhunt. Manhunt throws you into the desperate shoes of James Earl, a death row inmate who is forced to participate in a series of snuff films. To earn his freedom, he must fight and defeat gang members, because in this world, violence is rewarded. While Manhunt is known for its disturbing nature, the clowns have become a notorious element of its legacy. Drawing on the killer clown trope, these characters were intended as a group of mentally ill men with evil grins. Each clown has its own distinctive face paint ranging from menacing to absolutely terrifying. Some looked like they had a gaping maw for a face, and some wore barbed wires as braces. The clowns were originally intended to replace the Smileys, who were the final gang you would face in the game. Driven by stimulants, these clowns would treat the hunt as some kind of entertainment. As they ran after their targets, they would laugh and shout like maniacs. The leader of this hunter gang was James W. Gacy, who had a strong resemblance to real-life serial killer John Wayne Gacy. To his community, John was Pogo the Clown, an entertainer for children. In reality, he masked the monster within him. This connection added a touch of realism to James's character, making him a disturbing reflection of humanity's dark side. It was never clearly explained exactly why these clowns were removed. Maybe Rockstar considered them a bit too violent for their taste. With their sinister look and demented behavior, the clowns may have been seen as pushing the boundaries, and that's why they never made it past the cutting room floor. Do you think the clowns would have been too frightening for Manhunt? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to know more about the shocking content that made it into video games, check out this iceberg with the most controversial gaming moments.